last week. Demo from Antoine. I don't remember what it was.
Custom theme settings.
So the blog post is ready. Soteri showed us a new site in Greek. And also we talked about an issue with taxonomy and tags and too many form elements. Today, demos.
I can try to make a demo about the Monaco editor.
Who else has something? So disappointing, so disappointing. There used to be weeks with 2 or 3 demos.
I was just going to enjoy watching Antoine's demo, actually, because it sounds good.
So that's it. Specific things to talk about. I feel like I missed something last time. Let's see.
Sebastian, I have something
Yes.
that maybe we need to talk about the pager in the admin theme.
Okay. So Therese wants to talk about the pager. We'll talk about it. We'll have time. Status on Autoroute 1. We merged some time ago. The migration to 4.8 on the project, and MS is still working on upgrading lots of libraries on this branch. On Autoroute core, it's up to date, 2019. Uh, 19th, and I will filter on the dev branch. So we have export owner with AdminUserId parameter.
It was missing in this particular step.
So when we export user, yes, okay. We need to pass the AdminUserId. We used to use the same value for both, but now owner is the ID. Okay. Add empty shape. ContentPart.Thumbnail shape, particularly for menus. So at least it doesn't break. I assume ContentPart.Thumbnail. Where do we use this one? Steps?
No, it's the menus.
Oh, menus. It's written there.
Yeah. So they're the only one that actually have a thumbnail.
Menu. So when you create a custom menu item type,
when you add a dynamic part to a menu item.
I see.
But there isn't actually there isn't a good alternate to use it for just menu, so I'll just put it in there. Seems
that's what
relevant.
you say, but may impact others because anything that renders thumbnail for a type that will work.
Well, anything else would have crashed because the view doesn't exist. So, and we haven't seen it elsewhere.
Yeah.
We will see
when there is a new feature that also uses thumbnail. And in this case, thumbnail is a display type, right? Yeah. Reverse the admin menu for Twitter integration. Okay, just a dependency order. It depends on what. So now let me think. I'm not looking at what's there here. There is Twitter constant feature Twitter and Twitter constant feature signing. I would assume that signing depends on Twitter. This is this. Okay, now this menu in the signing. It's not dependency, it's what in what feature. Okay, so there is an admin menu, which is a Twitter, and there is a signing menu that is now in signing. Okay. And before that, we had this menu in signing, this menu in Twitter. This was the opposite. I see.
It was not put into the correct one, it was the reversed.
Okay. Flutebits document that all shells can use single connection string. All shells can use a single connection string. Now we need to find where.
The configuration one, I guess, yes.
What? Which one? This one? Oh, yeah, here. Let me check if the rest is just stuff. Okay, so global tenant data access configuration. If you want all tenants to access the same database, the corresponding field. Okay, so core connection string data is wider, direct prefix. The sample being 1 for SQL Server. There is no sample. Yes, there is for connection. I thought it was the sample connection string. Now that's data prefix. Okay, the data prefix needs to be configured to the prefix used by the default tenant.
It's actually changed slightly in a later PR because it wasn't quite.
I actually saw the other one. We'll see later then. But I saw actually the other one. I don't understand. So that thing moved like under something like that. So that we'll see. Fix the reference exception when clearing out all zones by David Eden. So if you happen to go to edit the layer zones and you make it blank, apparently this would be null and fail on MDC mapping action. But if it's empty, it's not empty, it's null. Okay. So now it will be empty. You won't be able to add any layer, but it won't crash. This one, fix Autoroute conflicts. So it's is it rewriting the change from last week, or is it? Okay, good luck understanding that. So is absolute path increasing. So this is to prevent you from generating.
So it is related to last week's change, but this was a follow-up to it. So if you have blog and blog slash, this will validate that this will consider them the same and prevent you from being able to use blog slash and another content item.
Yeah, so this is validation now. This is under the validation level. It's not an automatic validation. It's just that if you try to add a new content item with a slash, it will tell you no, there is already one without the slash, so don't do that. So this is validation. Okay. Beautiful, Antoine. How to fix an issue that took 6 months. So the idea is that a lot of people were saying that there was no way to disable the CDN easily, we say, or at least with a default story. There would be issues when you're in China to disable the CDN because you don't have access to the scripts that are required to go disable the CDN. And some people try to add a setting on the setup to make this a default true or false. After lots of discussions, we realized that actually we should be working for anyone by default, which is not UseCdn. Use locally served assets by default, even in the setup screen, which, by the way, was not already using CDN, which is good. And then if you want to use a CDN, or if you want to use the CDN resources, then it's an opt-in feature that we have to go to the settings and enable it. It won't change the default of any site that has already been set up. But if you create new sites, they won't use the CDN resources, they will use local resources. And I would say anyone who will care about it will definitely realize when they deploy their site, or when they test their site, that their assets are served by the Autoroute instance. And then they will wonder, hey, how do I use the CDN? And then they will find the settings and enable it. Some people might not care and will have maybe worse performance or better, actually, depends. And then they won't, it won't matter if they don't care or if they don't realize. So that is good. So now we should not see anyone complaining that the CDN is not accessible. We should still care about making CDN resources accessible from all the regions. But the default is to not use CDNs now. That's good. All the issues have been closed. Did people say good things or nothing? Remove properties that cannot be exported from site settings. Site settings deployment source. Okay. Interesting. Interesting var. So during code generation, this will probably be defined in the constructor, for instance, of this class. I'm wondering if there is a section where we would be able to define a static variable property member of the class, and then you will be able to make it a static constant. That would be interesting to know. I don't remember I've seen that. So here you come, because if you can see var, it's not in the class declaration, it's in the constructor or in the method. I wonder if there is a way, directive, to put it in static. Not sure.
Yeah, I must admit I've Googled for it and not found an answer, because I wondered the same. Be interesting to know if anyone knows.
I'm sure Pranav knows. He's here, but I'll ask later. So default. So how does it work? I don't remember the site setting deployment. How do you deploy site settings?
So you'll remember that a while ago that we did a large site settings PR where we generically register a setting for each of the settings that are held in the properties dictionary.
There was discussion about how it should be done.
So the UI was just a bit confusing because it still listed a couple of properties because it's done by a reflection. They can't actually be exported by this step because they're done by other steps. So just removing it so that it's quite clear.
Okay, so it's still done by reflection.
The view is done by a reflection, which is why they ignored properties.
Is it the thing that I didn't like, that it wasn't by reflection?
And
I was
I think the thing that you might not have liked the first time round was that it was proposed that we were going to get all the particular settings out of the properties dictionary and display them there as possibly exportable from that step rather than making new steps. But we went and did new steps.
Okay, deployment for cultures. Deployment for cultures.
And this would be one of the steps that was missing.
Okay. Why is that? Oh yeah, this is, yeah, I remember. We have things like this. This is the pattern. Okay. Then one. Font awesome. 15. Default admin settings. Display new menu is now false. Display menu filter is now false. Content and you remove the change that was display dark mode. So by default, so just now it's recorded officially. Display dark mode means you can. It will display the dark mode icon. It doesn't mean it will be in dark mode. It will display dark mode icon, and then you can turn it on or off. Okay, so that's true. Content culture picker icon. Okay. Global tenant configuration recommendation. So that's the change. Okay, now the table prefix is in the default thing. Just for the default tenant. Yes, that was weird otherwise. You had to set up. Okay. It's not the default value, it's the default value for the default tenant. Fixed part field missing after import. Oh, item idempotency. Delete existing part first and deleting them later will clear and imported content types using them. Delete part, so when we import a part first, we delete it. Otherwise, it's merging. Isn't it what you want? That's a replace. Okay, that's a replace content definition statement. Okay, so you have to replace it. Good. remove duplicate registration for user picker index field. Okay. Upgrade shortcodes, because why not? Do you think it's faster? I would not be so sure. I think it will be, but I will not be so sure. MultiText Field documentation. That's the best documentation. Well, that was a missing documentation. Values, it's good. Move tags to own viewmodel. For what? Taxonomy. Oh yes, so yeah, that's the issue that Terry's mentioned last week. Provided some good repro explanation. The issue was that lots of taxonomy terms, multiple fields with the same taxonomy or tags, so even more input fields. And then yes, when we counted, it was more than 1024. So now the solution is to use one JSON document containing all the things to update, and just send what this one JSON document per field. And this way, it will scale much better. Unless you have 1000 fields and then you have the same issue, but at that point, we'll find another fix. Just for you. When you have 1000 taxonomy fields, we'll teach you how to increase the form count. We'll personally move to your office and change it on your system. That's good. I'm using view, so that should not be that hard to do actually. Flowback, new references when using deleted content type definitions. Okay, just check that if you delete the content type, that's not, if you try to edit a content type that is not there anymore, it will fail. Upgrade YesSql. There are so many changes, I don't even know why we updated that. So many bug fixes and improvements. And the bug, by the way. Fix. Pin down extensions, Markdown, and docs credits. Fuck you, YesSql, we don't care. Fuck you, HTML syntaxer.
They are all in one page.
So what? Oh yeah, they're already in the notice or whatever. Yeah, you don't need that in documentation. I don't disagree. At first I was like, what? Atif made JSPlan? But no, it's ncrontab. I didn't know it was Atif. Okay, interesting. I met Atif 10 years ago, I think, in Geneva for Geneva.net user group. And he's super active on lots of open source projects. He's contributed to Esprima for Gint, and also lots of projects everywhere. He's everywhere. So, good. Questions, comments? Beautiful. So this version has a new feature. Dean found out that if you run the batching from the previous update from YesSql, and you use SQL Server and you have lots of tags or taxonomies, then you reach the limit of the SQL parameters you can send in a single query. That's bad, which is 2,100. So now I had to change the SQL such that it will create a new batch query if the number of parameters is over 2,100 for SQL Server. So it's specific to each database. I tried with 8,000 on SQLite and it worked. It was slow, but it worked. So that's one change. Another change is that it's not using Dapper anymore for the index queries. It's just using raw IDEO.NET. Dapper was not necessary at that point. And that, I think that's it. Also, it's also targeting net standard 2.0 and net standard 2.1. And when you're targeting net standard 2.1, it's using, it's implementing iDisposable async, which, by the way, I'm not sure. Do I have a test for iDisposable async? I'm not even sure now. I'm talking about it, but it sure is implemented.
Yeah, does that mean we could update some of our using on the session as well? Because we're using commit async at the moment, I think, aren't we?
So, yes. So iDisposable, async disposable. And just one second. Oh yeah, oh, it's doing that. Should save changes with okay, disposable async. async. See the issue I have in my head. I've had it for some time. So yeah, so with this, the issue is that with the previous version of YesSql, when we want to commit the transaction from a session or the changes from a session, because you're in a using statement, it will call dispose, and dispose will commit the transaction, but commit synchronously, even though there is an asynchronous way to do that, which is session.commitAsync. So what we do in Orchard is when the request is done, before the request is done, we get any session, and if there is anything in the session, we call commitAsync. And after that, we dispose the session. And we do that such that we intercept the session before it's disposed to call commit in an asynchronous way. Otherwise, when the session is disposed, it will commit it in a synchronous way. But with the new async disposable, the dispose can be async now, and it's implemented in the session in this version. So we can do await using, and it will call async disposable, or we can change, well, and we also can change Orchard. There are not so many commit async. I'm sure. Document store. Commit transaction task. So this is the workflow, and the last one is probably this one. Here. No, it's not this one.
It's one of those other ones you had.
Oh, there is one ahead. No, there is nothing.
Not that file. Yeah.
There is a middleware that we have. Maybe the container middleware or something like that. That will be executed at the end of the request, and before the end of the request, we resolve the session. And if it's there, we call commit async. And now we don't need to do that anymore. We can just dispose the session like any other disposable object at the end of the request. It doesn't need to be a custom interception. So that's a change that we'll do. That's good. And this one is independent. It's just a workflow, specific custom workflow activity for like SQLite that needs to be committed before you can do something in your workflows. If the workflow is triggered by the same request that completes some content already, that's specific. So yeah, that's a change on YesSql. That's it, I think. Plus bug fixes and handling all the different types like datetime offset. Datetime offset will be serialized in a string, for instance, in PostgreSQL, but as a datetime offset in SQL Server. The GUIDs are stored as GUIDs in SQL Server, but as unique identifier in PostgreSQL. The enums will be by default converted to integers. So lots of types that have been handled specifically for each database now. The time span, for instance, the time span, they will be serialized as ticks automatically. So you are not losing any precision when we store a time span directly. So just opinionated mappings, but these are for indexes. So they can be opinionated. If there is no choice to store something, or if you want to store something specific, don't store a time span. Store a string with whatever you want inside. If you want to store a time span, store it, but don't complain about how it's stored in a database. That's it. Demo, Antoine.
Yeah.
The demo is only for rich people if you live in Monaco.
Yeah.
What's the weather like in Monaco right now?
So Mikey created
it's
a
night.
PR.
It's cold. It's wet. No, it's not wet. It's cold. It's night. It's 11 Celsius. Not good.
Yeah. So we'll start by a bit of geography. Monaco is a small principality.
Small what? It's a small country.
In the south of France. So Maki created a PR about the Monaco editor. So a new editor mode available with the HTML field. So when you are in content type, you can use an HTML field and use this new kind of editor, the Monaco editor. Monaco is a web editor that is close to what Visual Studio Code looks like, with some of the same features. So there is a text area to configure the options, a link to explain which kind of options you can use in the configuration. So by default, it is using those ones, and by default, it will always use the HTML language. So if I edit an article, for example, the About page, there is a new text area. So you can type and you can see that there will be some auto-completion. So some colorization, I don't know if you can see it. You can
type
see
Control Shift P.
So it's not Control Shift P because it will print the page. It's when you right click, you can see the menu and it's F1.
What?
So if you press F1, it's like the same as Control P or Control Shift P in Visual Studio Code, and it will display the task that you can use. So for example, you could comment the selection. So I don't really...
Can you do Control/? Because here I see
exactly
AC.
Control/toggle line comment.
And do it again, Control/. See that works. Just for that, you can do it.
So the most of them are just formatting task. So you can, for example, do Control G to go to a specific line. You can do Control F, but there is a small CSS bug, and you can do Control H if you want to replace title by you can format the document, so if there was some spaces, you can press Alt-Shift-F. And for example, this text area is also using the script, so you can see.
Dangerous, but
you can see that it's using JavaScript, JSON formatting. You can see the colorization here.
Do you have? There is a schema, like if you add a new line, does it suggest you the new properties, or can it?
I don't know if it's suggesting. Okay.
No, it's just based on the existing tokens.
Yeah.
But maybe there is an option, if we look at the documentation, to provide a schema on the JSON. That would be great. So that's an HTML field. That's an editor for HTML field. Good. But maybe we can also reuse the resource and provide schemas for JSON editors that we use, like the placement JSON file, this file. Does it suggest that here?
In the PR, I don't think so. But you can implement your own languages. You can add some shortcuts. You can you see completion provider, control space, and it will suggest some.
So it's doable.
Yeah.
And maybe there is a way to do that with schemas already. So we can provide an existing schema, and the completion provider will use a schema, a JSON schema to that. Let's see.
So I don't know exactly what I can configure, but I can change the current theme. So if I use, there is, for example, VS dark, and something like HC for high contrast. So if I refresh, it will be using the VS dark theme.
And now I've seen a screenshot, but you will also resize to a phone size just to see how it looks like. It's usable. And it's usable.
It's hard to press F1 on a mobile phone.
That's okay. We won't do that.
Right click.
As long as it doesn't break and you can type some things. I mean, that's good. That's great. Yeah, that's good. And it's a new editor, so it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe implement some liquid. If you can suggest some liquid syntax, it could be interesting.
Yeah, that would be great. Also, and to provide even better, because there is IntelliSense here. We could even list all the tags in their properties.
Yeah.
Because today there is no way to know which one it is. Like content_item, display for whatever. So here you come. So if we could do that, that would be great. But as long as it's your resource, first, that's good. Second step, HTML field or specific editors for custom fields. That's fine. Third step is to start changing some of the editors to use it for specific needs, like liquid templating or custom configuration files that need to be auto-completed, like also the authentication.
Yeah, and for example, he was talking about the audit trail module.
Interesting, yeah.
To use the diff editor.
Great. Okay, that's open specificity. That's great. So yeah, definitely as a resource, definitely as a field editor, and then we'll see what people do with that. It will be great. Thank you. And thank you, Michael, for that. I don't. So, Teresa, do you say thank you in Greek?
Ευχαριστώ.
Well, I won't say Efaristo, Michael. Okay, good. And if we can find also why the search is behaving badly with the Bootstrap theme, the buttons, it's, you see, when you search something, it collided with some Bootstrap stuff. I see that in the PR, so it's sad. And maybe we'll find it. That's great. What else? Topics. Yes, Soteris wanted to talk about something. Soteris wanted to talk about pager in admin theme. The best pager.
Yes, actually, I was looking around how to use the pager, not the pager's living in admin. I saw Adwan use it in a tenant administration. I couldn't find something very straightforward. So I saw that Jasmine, I don't know the exact pronunciation.
That's okay.
Proposed
Script.
Jasmine.
Script. Yeah, script. Proposed that we have an option either to use pager or pager slim, but I don't know how we can do that.
We talked about it during triage. Was it during triage or last week? I don't remember.
I think it was last week. I
yeah.
opened an issue for it. It shouldn't be hard to achieve with a setting.
Yeah, so the setting, but we talked about it for the blog at least.
For the list part.
For the list
yeah,
part.
Is that's what you're talking about, isn't it, Soteris?
Yes, for the list part. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what we mentioned is that we can have two drivers or one driver generating two different shapes based on the setting. And then for each, you say for each, we can do that both, but what did you suggest, Dean, that we do it for all the, yes, we said we
probably argued it as, yeah, I argued it for the type level because
type level. So that
I feel if you leave it, sorry, go on.
No, I talk too much, so that's good that you talk. I'm happy.
I was just saying, if you don't do it at the type level, and you do it at the kind of editor stage, then it means as somebody developing a site, you've actually got to style both of them because the user might suddenly decide to change during the middle of things. And when you've got a set design, it just seems better to keep it at a type setting.
So in the blog, in the blog content type definition, there will be a new setting called what pager do you want? And then you will be able to select if you want the number one, the number-based pager, or the full pager, or the slim one, which is just previous next. And that should be very easy to do. So you can do it. So there's two drivers. We have one driver right now. So either you decide to have one driver might be still fine, but based on the setting, you return one shape or the other. Done. Boom.
Yeah, the page is actually built in a service. It's not even in the driver because it all got moved to a service. So the service can just choose to return which one based on the setting. There's no problem.
And based on the setting and also the query string, then do the correct query, the different query to get the different way of getting a page, and then render the same thing. That should be not that hard to do. And we'll solve like a big issue, which is which one to take, which one to implement. Well, both. It's configurable. That's good. So I think the discussion is done. look at that. This is the Windows terminal. This is a new version, which is still a preview, but a preview, but it's still on GitHub. And now you can click on links. Super good, because when you run Orchard like this, you can click there. You don't have to copy paste the link anymore. So happy. I've been playing with that all week long, just clicking on links. So this is Orchard default blog recipe. And I spent a few hours working on perf for that. And I was like so sad. I told Dean on the chat that Orchard was 3 times slower than a year ago. And I'm like, what happened? It used to be so, when you click on it, it's not bad, right? It's good. But it used to be 3 times faster. I did some benchmarking and I'm like, nah, just 1,500 requests per second. It should be like 3,000 or 4,000 requests per second. And in the trace, I could not find anything. So I like, okay, I run the same app, but a year ago, right when we switched to 3.1, because I don't have 3.0 on the machine. I'm sure it was fast already there, but actually it was the same. It was also slow. So I'm like, okay, good. Orchard didn't regress. Actually, it's my new laptop that is slower than my desktop. So that explains. And I run the benchmark on my desktop and then it was fast again. Great. Then I run the benchmarks comparing Fluid. Oh, first you see this bug about after demo. I fixed it yesterday. It's one of the risks of going to Fluid second version, because migrating the tags, I made a mistake with a variable name, and that's some risk. But this is using the new, actually, I didn't know. This is using the new Fluid engine, and you can see, well, you can see there is nothing to see, right? Apart from this bug, which has been fixed, it's working fine, which is interesting because it means that on this branch, I don't know what commit I'm on. I'm on a good commit. Oh, I didn't rebuild in release yet. I built only in debug. Okay, and I was running the release branch. So then I ran some benchmark. I did benchmarking this commit, or maybe this one. And then I benchmarked the one right before, which was actually the one from that I had on my machine, which was the one from Chantieri, I think, or the PR from Chantieri that is updating YesSql. And what I found is that on the about page, I was getting maybe 4,000 requests per second on the YesSql branch. And on the free branch, which is just updating the free branch, it's getting slower. So with the new Fluid engine, it's like 10%, 15% slower than the previous Liquid engine. It doesn't make any sense because it's much faster, but it's actually slower. So when earlier I asked Dean on the update for shortcode, is it actually better? We don't know. It's been updated because the library itself is faster, but it doesn't mean that it will be faster in Orchard. It might be even slower. I don't think so for shortcode because the changes in shortcode are not the same as in Fluid. I think the changes in Fluid that will impact the perf is the way it's integrated with the view buffer, how it's rendering stuff. So I will find out why it's slower in Orchard eventually, but right now it's slower. I'm not. So it's for rendering, which is weird because rendering should also be a little bit faster. Just the parsing is changing in the way I'm doing things. So it might be related to the text writer stuff or encoding. I have to check why, but that will be interesting to find out. However, something I haven't tried, which should be much faster, and I'm not even questioning it. If I can authenticate, I think I could not this morning. Yeah, I can. So is when you edit the content type, if I click on the blog post, it's still snappy, right? There is nothing to say about it. Do a preview. Now the difference is the parser should be much faster because the benchmarks they say that it's like 5 times faster in parsing and much less memory consumption. So I assume we can't see that because we have a 200 millisecond, I think, delay or buffer. so that whatever you type during 200 milliseconds won't be refreshed. Just every 200 milliseconds we'll refresh the thing. But it's still working. Okay. So if I change, can I select the new image? Plus this one. Okay. So yeah, it's working. This should be improved. I can't benchmark that, but at least. Oh yeah, it doesn't pick up the tags. That's something to improve. What a. That should work. Just an event to trigger.
Yeah, actually, that might be a regression from that PR.
That happens.
It used to work. Yeah.
Here.
Oh,
No. I selected it again, and now it disappeared. So there is a delay between the event. So the first event was not triggered, but the second one was triggered too late. See now, so it's one event too late. So there is an issue here. Someone will find the solution. Should be that on. Yeah. So that should improve the preview, because on preview we have to pass the template again to render it. Do we have to? Oh no. Am I saying stupid thing? Yes, here in this case it doesn't change anything because the template is the same. We are just rendering a different view model. The only thing that is changing is when you go on these templates. Yeah, that's the difference. When you edit these templates and you have the preview there, that will have to pass everything. So that's the only reason that it will. That's the only location where it will improve dramatically the performance. So I said everything I said here is wrong. Exactly the same thing. So,
have you got the agency theme on that machine?
Yes, maybe I already know I already did. I mean, I don't have a tenant with that. Why does it choose? Oh, because you have. I see what you mean.
Because it has a template.
Yes, so I was worried that the perf was bad, and I'm not, well, for that regressed 3 times. We didn't, my machine regressed perf. I'm now worried about the free perf on Autoroute. I will have to find it. That's good because we'll find some things. And while I was looking at that, I found so many things that we can improve. I created a branch with lots of commits already. You can look at that. I push the branch. Each commit does something different, okay? To optimize the perf. First, this one. Don't encode using text encoder.write. So this is some code we're doing. Encoder.encode a text writer and what we want to encode. Here we have much more like this. Yeah, this one. So the idea is that the text writer here, that is called, by doing encoder.encode, this encode method will call writer.write with this value. And by doing that, it will actually call the writer.write with a char. Because this field contains encoded chars, it will find, even if the string is like 1000K long and there is one char to encode, it will call the writer with the char overload one by one, char by char. So we get buffers of one char all the time. And most of the, for instance, the buffer in MVC for each char will instantiate a new string. Super bad. And I saw that by looking at the profile. So what I did is just change that we just encode a string like this. We don't write it to a buffer, and it will give us a string. And when we give a string which is encoded to the text writer, then there will be just one. It will just keep the same string without allocating n times a string with one char. So that's better. And so I found the same issue in Fluid, actually, that was doing it with read-only span. If you try to write a read-only span, it will actually write each char of the read-only span one by one. So I had to create an overload for the read-only span write text writer to support that. So this is this commit. I created another one for the grid. So whenever we render a shape, we have a new grid which was created because the tag helper context in tag helpers needed a unique string, and we decided to use a GUID. This is not free. Creating a GUID takes some time, takes some memory, and we could see that in the profiles. Like 1% of the allocations were just GUIDs. So I replaced it by just incremented an integer and creating a toString. So it will be a small string. It will still be unique. I'm not even sure it has to be unique. We need to check the implementation of that. At least now it's not allocating a GUID and a string. So it doesn't appear anymore in the traces. This one, dynamic permissions. Every time we render a content item or a summary of the content item or anything that is content item, which means lots of them, for instance, just in the blog post, between the widgets, everything, we have lots of content items. It will go into authorizing, can you read this content item? And because we have dynamic permissions per role and per type, dynamic per type, we were creating clones of the permission class all the time with the variation of the permission. So I just did first a dictionary to prevent a set of ifs, and then a static array of permission by type that is caching each permission for each type. So we don't have to create a permission every time and to format the string every time. That's how it appeared in the profiles. That removes also some allocations. Pooled allocated char arrays. This one I reverted, but it was a mix between my two branches, so maybe I will put it back again. The issue is that this guy will just create too many chars, and we can pool the char arrays. So I just made I reverted it, but maybe we should take it back. I will benchmark it in isolation. The issue with array pools is that you remove allocations, but you add more contention because there is more looking to get a char array. So it has to be on high load, might not be interesting. I have to check. Remove allocations from tag helper matching. This one appeared also a lot. So this is one of the piece of code I don't like that we have. It's necessary, but we need to change some things. This is whenever we render a shape based on a tag helper, a liquid tag based on tag helper, we have to find the tag helper every single time. Even if you call the liquid tag shape, oh, what is the tag helper for shape? All the time, every time it's rendered, and we render it a lot. So what I saw in the profile is that there was a substring that will appear as a huge creation of strings, and this is this one. Just to compare if the substring is matching, we create a substring out of this thing and then match it to another string. No, we don't need to create a new string to match a substring. So I use two spans and compare them. So it's not allocating anything in this case. So we can compare substrings without having to create a substring. And some little other optimizations, like we don't need to compare everything, well, to compare the substrings if the lengths don't even match, which is most of the time the case. We still go a lot in this block of code. It's not allocating anymore, but we still go there a lot. And this is something we could hard code, like the shape liquid tag is the shape tag helper. Why do we have to look for it every time? We should have a way to say it. And this is the case for many things. The display for liquid tag helper is the display for ASP.NET tag helper. And again, we should just register it once and not have to find it every time, because we have n tag helpers and we have parameters, and it will check for all the parameters, all the tag helper names every time. Super bad. I mean, super bad. It works well. You don't see it, but when you look at the trace, you can see it a lot. So that's something to improve. Even better if the code that is used in the tag helper is directly used in the liquid tag, or the other way around. We're using sanitizer. I don't know. I saw that the sanitization was appearing a few times in the traces, and there was a lot of create parser calls. So I assume that it works, but I didn't check the documentation of whatever I saw from the API. Didn't say if it had to be a singleton or not. but I made that HTML sanitizer service a singleton because this class actually this class has private read-only sanitizer. So I made the service a singleton such that we have a single instance of the sanitizer. I didn't want to make it static because it will be shared per tenants, and we have options, so we can't do that, or create another service that is a singleton. But yeah, so we have to check if this can be reused, and it looks like it's working. So maybe it's working, and then we don't have to create a parser.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that is thread safe. I made it scoped because it just seemed like a good idea at the time, to be honest. But it's the configurer. The options aren't thread safe when you configure them.
That's totally normal to not think about perf implications, or because it doesn't seem to be an issue like at the site. But then we look at traces and we find what's actually an issue and focus on what's the best thing to remove. So if we know, let's do it. But if we don't know, well, let's use the standard judgment. So here it's fine. So I created this one. I didn't see any change after on the perf itself, but you could see in the trace that the create parser was not appearing anymore. So that's good. And if you can see it in the top trace, it means it has an impact at least in allocations. So that, and then I reverted the pool because I was worrying that it was actually the thing that was making the branch slower. No, it's actually the base branch, which is fluid too. So interestingly, that would be what would be interesting would be to check these perf improvements without the fluid 2, or until I find the fluid 2 issues. So that, and I also noted some other things we can improve. I think I put it there to save it. This one is crazy. First of all, this one, but yeah, this one because actually of another one, because of. So yeah, so this tag is special. Apparently, it creates lots of string builders. I have to check why. They are coming from the pool, but not from the pool. They are allocated every time because we can see it in the allocate slow. So they are allocated. So they are not reused. And we use page title in every page, but it appears like lots of shapes, but it appears more than everything else. So we need to check that. 61% of the allocations are 61% of all the string builders are just for page title. And this is, yeah, this one also, lots of allocations from dependency injections. We use the dependency injection area, that's fine. But here it was just from liquid template context extensions, and in this case, it was for liquid templates. Every time we render a template, we generate some services. And I found out that there is this class here. Let me show you the issue. What did I do wrong here? Oh, maybe it's not in the file. Okay. That's this file. So whenever we render a liquid template, we create a liquid template context, okay, that will contain properties that are useful for every filter, for instance. Services, display helper, URL helper to generate URL, to create shapes, access the layout, and we resolve this service and we put it as a property of the context for every single liquid template execution. So a lot. And so we resolve, and actually that's why we see it in the profile, because we do resolve all these things all the time. And then we resolve this thing and we assign it there. And then again, another resolution. Oh, and then again, a new one, geolocation. So we just do that all the time. And sometimes there are loops or any variable. So we do that a lot and for every time, even if we don't need that. So I will have to change field so we can provide a lazy way of providing properties. So we can say, okay, there is a service property you can access. And well, this one will be a property, but this one, display helper, there is a display property. But when you access it, then you will be able to resolve it by evaluating, by resolving that. So like a lazy object. So we can define it, but we won't have to resolve the service if it's not necessary, because most of the templates, they don't need the display helper, they don't need the URL helper, they don't need the shape factory, okay? Maybe one of them, but not the tens of them. So I will have to provide something. Or
yeah, I mean, given we put the services in there, couldn't we just get it to resolve those from the services?
Yes, yes, we could just provide services and not provide that. When I saw that, my first reaction, I'm like, why do we have that? I'm sure there was a reason, but I don't see now anymore the reason. You could just provide that and just let the filter resolve it when they need it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we actually probably use the display helper and URL helper a lot.
Yes.
We tend to just use services to resolve what we want, but you know.
Maybe it was
a bad. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, I assume at some point we just need that, or we just need that, and then we need the third one, but we didn't think that at that point, okay, let's stop, because we'll just add more and more, and we're just adding because we needed that somewhere, and it made it. Yeah, so I'm sure we should be able to do that, or find a way that because it's in the same request, we can share the same property. So I'm thinking about the same way we have. Let me show you in this one maybe. The global static members. So this is things like this. I will change it to make it, as we mentioned in the PR, more instance-based or more tenant-based. So there are things that we can reuse every time on every template, or per template or per request for every template. So we will just be able to share these objects and have a hierarchy of objects, a list of objects that will do that. So yeah, that's one way. Yeah, that and then some other, yeah, that's my conclusions. And this also, I'm seeing like lots of create class proxy, but that's weird because in theory, it should be created only once. A class from a dynamic proxy should be created once. So if the ARP is warm, it should not go back into this code. So we have to look into that. So yeah, lots of things that we can improve just by looking at profiles, like we've done many times in the past, just to have focused work on perf. So there are lots of easy things to fix. The fact that there are so many people who touch this file, it's weird. And mostly I should, yeah. Okay, well, that's it. Just talking about perf. So something faster doesn't mean it will be faster, because depending on the context, might have an impact. And I hope I will find the reason why Fit2 is slower in Orchard Core. Good. Questions, comments? Talk too much? Awesome. So thanks everyone. See you next week or next Thursday for the triage. Good.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.